Hello and welcome everyone to a very special webinar in our new user series. I am joined by our Senior Director for Compliance here, Louis Gianni. Did I say your last name right? I realized that as we were practicing, I never asked you how to say your last name.
That's absolutely good enough. So
okay. Beautiful. Well, I am Consuelo, and you may have seen me in other webinars. I am a training consultant here at Orion with a little over 6 years of experience. And this webinar, we're going to be talking about reimagining compliance from automation to intelligence. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Louis Giannini, Senior Director here at Orion. Prior to joining Orion, I was part of Basis Code Compliance, of course, which is now Orion Compliance, where Orion acquired Basis Code in late 2021. And prior to being part of FinTech, I had started my career out in the MetLife building in Manhattan for BNP Paribas Asset Management and some other asset managers.
Giannini. I'm so glad you said it out loud. Well, before we get into our webinar, we do have a couple of housekeeping items that I want to take you through. The first one is that this is a live webinar. We are not pre-recorded, so please submit your questions. We will save time at the end of the webinar to go through your questions. Now, for whatever reason, if we get maybe too many questions, we run out of time, or if your question requires a more in-depth conversation, then we will make sure to reach out to you at the end of the webinar. We also have a lot of content and resources available to you. If you click on the Learn More button on the upper right-hand side of your screen, that's going to take you to a new page where you can access support articles as well as other future webinars, so including our new user series or clips. So we have a lot of content and resources for you there as well. And lastly, I would say our most commonly asked questions is this webinar going to be recorded? And the answer is yes. So at the end, you should receive an email with a link to the recording. If you do not receive that email for any reason or you can't find it, just click on the link that you used to register for this webinar and it will automatically take you to the on-demand recording. We also have a few exciting conferences coming up, one of those being Eclipse University. We had our first one last December that was incredibly popular, and we have our next one on May 12th. Registration is open and you can get early bird pricing by April 1st. So scan that QR code or follow the link, type in the link. I'd recommend scanning that QR code if you're interested in Eclipse University or if you know a colleague that would be interested. Similarly, we have our Red Tail and Align universities coming up this year. Atlanta for Red Tail University is open. And for our Orion New User webinar participants, you can use the registration code OAT New User 50 for $50 off that registration. If you are not a Red Tail user, don't worry. All of those little pins in blue are our Align universities. So there is Orion content in there. We're doing face-to-face training. We have consultations at Aligns as well. It's a lot of really great content resources and incredible people that you get to meet. So if you're interested in either Red Tail, Align, or both, scan that QR code as well. Now, lastly, a small disclaimer that this webinar may cover features that you do not have access to. If that is the case, please contact the Manage Users admin at your firm. And of course, we are talking about Orion Compliance. So that's going to be the biggest feature that we're going to be talking about, that if you don't have access to it, talk to your Manage Users admin. With all of the housekeeping items said, Louis, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Consuelo. All right. It's again, it's great to be here and talk today about Orion Compliance, but also more importantly, AI. Right? It's the hot topic of today, and I would ask, I guess, to everyone here, show of virtual hands, who took a self-driving car to work today, right? Um, the reason I ask that is the majority of firms that use AI, only a less than one third of them have enterprise governance. The majority of firms are still exploring AI, but most are still in, a pilot purgatory. So the industry is at a real inflection point where tech capabilities now exceed implementation readiness, and technology and regulations are not really the thing that's holding us up. It's more organizational governance, operational governance, and the winners that will capitalize on this new age of technology will be those who solve governance and change management. Right? AI is not magic. AI is an amplifier, it's additive. And our view on AI is that it's not the self-driving car, right? It's not going to automatically do everything. We view it more as the GPS, right? It's going to get you where you want to go faster. It's going to flag patterns that humans may miss, and it's going to give you more efficiency, more time savings, and the ability to have smoother, more streamlined overall workflows. I want to just go to the next slide now and talk about Adam, right? So when we talk about AI, it's easiest to look at it through the lens of our fictional chief compliance officer, Adam, right? So we're at this inflection point as an industry, but let's bring this down to a real life example, right? Like most CCOs, Adam's excited about AI, but he's also cautious. He knows that AI can help him get where he wants to go faster, but he also knows he's still the one driving the car, right? So he wants to use AI. He's excited about it. His organization's excited about it. But beyond all of that excitement, right, you have to get your governance house in order. So, for example, he needs to have centralized storage, controls, documentation. His policies need to be updated. There needs to be a governance framework, an AI framework. All of that needs to be managed and vetted and reviewed, and people need to align on it in order to move that technology forward. And those of you who are already using AI within your firms already know this very well. And those of you who haven't yet will start to experience this also. So, for Adam, he's thinking, okay, I need a way to stay organized. I need a way to be able to incorporate all of that. What are some ways I can do that? Well, one of them, of course, are spreadsheets and Word documents, and that's one way. But there are other ways to do that as well. And one of them would be, for example, within Orion Compliance, there's a feature called the library. And at a high level, the way it works is it's a document repository where you can save and manage files and configure a folder tree. So think of your compliance manual and whatnot. But what you're also able to do, what makes this interesting, is put, for example, your AI governance framework. You can have different versions. You can link to it throughout different parts of the system, including questionnaires, as well as testing of your compliance controls. So governance framework is a core step. And so Adam understands this. And so using Orion Compliance is just one option that he has to centralize that documentation, share it with others, track the versions, and just have that centralized location for managing those files. But beyond governance framework, right, we talk about what AI does best, what Adam does best, right? Those are two very different things. And it's important to emphasize that, again, what's actually working with AI, right? So today in the landscape of AI, there's a lot of hype. And to separate that from the reality, it's important to really focus on what's actually working. So things like communication surveillance, pattern recognition, text analysis, image analysis, things like that, where AI is able to do, a holistic sweep of the material and produce for you output that can provide guidance on whether or not it's something that you need to look closer at. AI more broadly catches things that humans miss. But what's not is as focused on AI is things that require laser precision or more gray area, things like nuanced judgments that require human understanding and intent, right? Regulatory intent, not just text. So, if there's a FINRA rule or an SEC rule, or if there's a rule that, that if you look at it on a rules basis, it's different from a principle basis. That's something that Adam is going to do best from a compliance standpoint, right? So there's things that humans do very well, and there's things that AI does well. The synergy lies in being able to combine those strengths in a way that's easy to use, and of course that adheres to within your firm's governance. So for example, you can see here on the slide, ambiguity, intent, judgment, right? These are all human things. It's important to note when we talk about compliance in the context of AI, especially with Orion Compliance, we look at it from a lens of human in the loop, where compliance is involved in making final decisions. It's not completely automating the decision from compliance. It's simply bringing the pattern, the insight, the awareness to compliance sooner so that the compliance person can take action. And yes, AI does do very well at spotting patterns, comparing different things, looking at large data sets, right? Especially those of you who have used, plugins and Excel and things like that. And that's where it's really able to shine and really able to streamline some of those high volume, more rudimentary, antiquated tasks. So let's talk about another use case, of course, that's central to AI within your firm, right? Not just a governance framework, but vendor due diligence, right? So how many of you have gotten requests? I'm sure there's a lot that, everybody at your firm wants to use this AI tool, that AI tool, right? That's probably inundated with all those different things. So Adam thinks to himself, okay, I have all these requests. I need to perform due diligence on these vendors, right? Need to be transparent, needs to be explainable, need to be able to have safeguards and guardrails, right? With all the usage of data and model bias and so forth. So today, Adam does this via spreadsheet, does various other disparate processes. And yes, that is one way to do it, and we've all been there at some point. But to scale that can be, pretty difficult. And so what Adam discovered is within Orion Compliance, he's able to leverage additional functionality in the way of certifications to perform that due diligence. So you might ask, well, how would that work? If those of you who have used Orion Compliance may say, I've used this before. I send this out to everybody at my firm and they attest to, receiving the compliance manual. Well, one of the most interesting things about this functionality is that certifications at a high level are a way for you to build customized questions, send them to an audience, and track their responses. But one of the interesting things about it is that certifications not only works internally for people at your firm, but it also works externally for anybody in the world with a valid email address. So if you are using, if someone at your firm wants to use XYZ vendor, what you could do, for example, is build an ethical AI certification. And you could have the vendor attest, for example, of course, to demonstrate responsible use of AI, right? How are they handling data? How are they handling privacy and security? What's the governance around the model like? Things of that nature. Of course, it can be used internally as well, but it can be used externally. And it works the same way, meaning that once one of these is issued, the recipient would click on a link in their email, they open up the questions, and once they answer the questions, the responses automatically get pulled back into the system where compliance can view it, run it through a workflow, and then export to on-demand reporting as needed. So, again, as Adam continues his journey for making sure vendors have their T's crossed and I's dotted, he can leverage certifications as one way to keep that information centralized, streamline that workflow, produce that reporting, add any findings, exceptions, right? Maybe there's a vendor, a lot of smaller companies out there that maybe, need further scrutiny or need to be reviewed further. Those can be added as well. And then you have, a complete end-to-end workflow with on-demand exportable reporting. But due diligence and governance are just part of the equation, right? There's many elements that go into this. So beyond just certifying and having a vendor attest to it, there's also a lot of internal work that goes into this, right? So if you are testing, for example, your compliance controls and you are having vendors certify, how do you evaluate risk of AI, right? At a more macro level, right? Not just siloed of, hey, I had this vendor sign off and we've got a governance framework document, but how do you holistically create that confluence point when all those elements come together where you can produce a detailed, comprehensive look at all of the risks that you're evaluating and the controls that you have in place to mitigate those risks, right? Are you ready? Is your organization ready? Is your firm ready? What controls do you have in place? What are you doing to mitigate these risks? What processes have you developed or are going to develop to mitigate those risks? And who's responsible, right? So, who's the person that's signing off or team of people that's signing off on these risk categories, and how are you handling that? So this is something, again, that Adam has attempted to do in a spreadsheet. He's written VBA macros and done a whole bunch of things. And it's just proven, again, to not be really scalable and just not be the most, organized at times. So what he's discovered is within Orion Compliance, he has the ability to leverage something called the risk assessment. Now, a risk assessment can be leveraged prospectively to look at the risks that your firm evaluates on an ongoing basis and attach controls that mitigate those risks, right? This would be virtually everything that's comprised, within your compliance program. So think books and records, right? So what you're looking at on your screen is an example where there is a broad category, in this case, data management and privacy, and then that's followed by subsequent more specific identified risks, right? So in the context of books and records might be a category, but then you might have, maintain books and records on an annual basis. And what you're able to do is then take up to 6 different weightings. So in this case, in the example on the screen, there's MP, ME, MR, IP, IE, IR, with P, E, and R standing for probability, effect, and reputational risk out of the box, with the M values representing mitigated and the I's inherent. Now, Adam looks at this and says, that's great and everything, but the process that we do internally isn't that nuanced. We don't need all those weightings. And so the nice thing about that functionality is that it can be configured and customized so that you can use as little as 1 risk weighting. So instead of having 6 columns, you could have 1, and you can customize the column headers and names. So for example, you could have 1 column, call it risk rating, RR, and then you can define your identified risks. You can weight them on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And the interesting thing about it is the system will automatically look at your attestations, your testing, and it will automatically flag and bubble up any exceptions that you've marked during the time period that you're reviewing. So if you're reviewing, for example, risk for your firm for all of this year, as you look at it, what you'll see is those exceptions will start to bubble up, and you can then drill down and say, okay, here's how we view data management and privacy. We view it as a 1, low risk. Okay, mitigated, it's a low risk. And the next logical question is, well, how do you support that? And so what Adam's able to do is attach the controls that he's already built in the system to say, here's what we do. This is how we mitigate that risk. And if there's any exceptions attached to that control, they'll bubble up so you can drill down accordingly. This is a great tool for, as we're showing this example, AI risk assessment readiness. It can be used on a simple basis, like I mentioned, with 1 person, 1 column, all the way up to really large teams where you can have 1 person, for example, or multiple people do a final sign-off. But if you want to be more complex, you can actually assign 1 or multiple teams of people to different categories to sign off on those first. Maybe you have, for example, data expert, subject matter expert who'd like to sign off on the privacy side of things, and then you'd assign them, and then somebody would ultimately sign off on the entire assessment. Again, end-to-end workflow, on-demand reporting. This allows Adam to map out the identified risks and determine, hey, are we ready for this? Are we ready to enhance AI usage across the board? Are there any major risks we should stop and pause on first before we move forward? But risk, of course, being a key element, it's not the only element. Those of you, of course, that read the headlines know that this is a very popular topic. There's already firms that have been, allegedly disciplined or called out for this potential behavior, and that's AI washing, right? We see it everywhere. AI, there's claims that AI can do virtually everything. And so it's really important, especially those, from a compliance standpoint, to bring the reality into the equation, right? Marketing teams, can make AI claims. AI content can make communication, but there has to be a review of what's being done to say to a regulator, for example, hey, are we using AI the way that we claim we're using it, and can we support that, right? And so one of those ways is through, for example, marketing content, right? So when marketing submits a presentation, it's, what are we claiming? Can we support it? Does this need to, be reviewed further and be tightened up a bit? And so currently, the way Adam's process works is someone from marketing sends him an email, he tries to look for it and get to it, or he goes through a CRM, and there's a process there. Within Orion Compliance, what he's able to do is leverage the forms module. And the way forms works at a high level is you can create a group of custom questions, and someone can submit them on an ad hoc basis with or without approval, depending how you want to structure it. Now, what's really interesting about forms is, yes, you can see the underlying form submission. You can see all of the questions and the answers on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also click on the attachment and you can download it as well and review it within your browser and so forth. But you're able to approve or reject it with a comment, and the submitter gets an email. Or you could return it. So maybe you're looking at a marketing piece and there is language in there that needs to be reworked. You can make a comment, send it back, and you can also, redline it, upload it, send it back. The person will get an email, hey, look at this. They'll log in, make the changes. But what's nice about it and what Adam appreciates is that it has an audit trail. So when you go to run your reporting, you can export, for example, that AI-powered investment selection form submission, and you can choose to export just the final submission or all of the back and forth, and have key workflow history of, who was involved, what changes were made, what questions and answers were there, what attachments were there, what got approved. So all of that can be exported on demand, which is pretty convenient for Adam. And so what we're looking at here is through the lens of a compliance officer, a submission for marketing, and what that would look like. And again, AI-powered investment selection is, it's an example here, but of course it's very topical. And the goal here would be, from a compliance standpoint, is to say, hey, is this something that, we agree with putting out? Is this okay? Does this adhere to our framework and our position on how we are marketing AI to people outside the firm? But marketing, using forms is, like I mentioned, it's one aspect, right? We're talking all about how technology is outpacing organizational readiness. But what we haven't talked about yet is how AI can be leveraged within compliance, right? We're talking a lot more now about, hey, let's use Orion Compliance, or let's use compliance from the standpoint of readiness and governance. But how do you make that jump to governance, but also using AI to accelerate compliance? So what I want to talk about next is really exciting. AI-powered marketing review. Here at Orion, AI is a central pillar of our strategy, right? And it's going to continue to be. And one of the major, guidestones of that is, of course, compliance. And within that, AI-powered marketing review is something that we believe is key to accelerating compliance workflows, right? So if you picture a marketing person, dropping a presentation into a window where AI will fully analyze it, provide them all of the comments back and say, hey, you need a disclosure here, this language should be changed, and be able to train it on your data, be able to train it on how your firm conducts your marketing process. And then once that marketing person has gotten that guidance, then submit it to compliance, where again, compliance can review the submission. Again, emphasis on having the human in the loop, right? Compliance is reviewing it. They're saying, okay, now I don't need to do all of that back and forth. The AI already went through, pointed everything out. I can see what the changes were. Okay, this is excellent. And then choose to approve it from there. So, we're really excited. This is one of the main use cases that we're exploring. And we're really excited about bringing AI-powered marketing review to Orion Compliance. It's in our experience, I think it's probably the most effective use case anecdotally adopted from a compliance standpoint today. I'd say that anecdotally, it's probably the most highly adopted use case within compliance departments by firms. And the reason is because it immediately adds value and reduces friction, right? When you're working with marketing, right? Especially if your firm is doing a couple hundred submissions a month, and you're doing scale, right? You're going to have marketing people that are today, right? They're constantly submitting material to you, and you're constantly spending time modifying that material and then sending it back and forth and back and forth. This would allow that whole workflow to be streamlined by using AI to guide that marketing person, make those comments ahead of time, get it to compliance sooner, so the review could be, of course, performed.
It's funny you say that, Louis, because as a training consultant, we're part of the marketing department and we're constantly making presentations, constantly sending them through compliance. And so I love this scenario and I'm glad you brought it up.
Absolutely. Yes. Our CCO would agree. And we're super excited about it. But AI-powered marketing review, of course, as exciting as it is, it's not, it's beyond just the functionality, it's staying in the know, right? And I think this ties into our broader theme of governance. And it's, hey, things are changing so rapidly. How can my firm stay in the loop? How can my firm stay better in the loop? And one way is AI regulatory updates. So what's happening? What's the latest? What's happening out there? Are there any new AI tools on the scene? Are there any new regulatory updates? Are you missing anything important? What Adam is able to do within Reg News, which is a feature that allows you to get regulatory news alerts, is manage his subscription based on different regulatory bodies or announcement types, alerts, bulletins, et cetera. But more importantly, also be able to filter by keyword. So if AI/artificial intelligence is something that Adam wanted to track within the app as well, this is something that can easily be updated to start receiving those news and events, to just stay on top of what's happening, right? Because again, we keep talking about it. The big challenge has really been around organizational readiness. And part of that is the speed at which things are moving. But we talked about testing controls. So I also want to talk about testing your readiness, right? So we talked about data privacy before, risk assessment. We talked about model bias management. How do you, if someone knocks on the door and says, how do you make sure that you're ready for AI besides your risk assessment? What you're able to do is say, hey, we test the controls, on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly, quarterly, whatever the cadence might be, ad hoc. And here's our proof of process. Here's what we do to test our controls. So within Orion Compliance, there's a testing module, and this is really important because this becomes Adam's proof of process. For example, AI model monitoring, right? Somebody at your firm wants to use a new AI model. Hey, we'd like to use this model. Can we use it? Okay, well, is the model validated? Has there been any bias mitigation put in place? How are we tracking those things? So what Adam's able to do here is define his firm procedures on the right-hand side, and then document any findings, comments, or exceptions, how they're going to be resolved, and again, tie that into on-demand exportable reporting. So incredibly important, and something that I think is core, not just to AI, but also any compliance program, right? Whether it be filings, whether it be best execution, whether it be, if you use an email communications vendor, tracking that email monitoring. So testing is absolutely central to any compliance program. But in the context of context of AI, model monitoring would be a prime example where Adam might use this. So let's talk about a readiness campaign, right? You've got your framework in place. You've got your testing in place, your controls. You've established vendor due diligence. You've put together a risk assessment and have a holistic idea of where your firm stands on readiness. What we've mentioned up to this point has been different pieces, right? Different pieces of one thing that you're trying to accomplish, and that's the outcome of AI readiness. So Adam thinks, how do we bring this all together, right? I can do piece one over here and piece two over here. How do I tie it in? So that would go towards the next slide, which is the governance and audit, also known as the campaign module. And this module, at a high level, what it does is think of it like a centralized organization tool that takes existing things that you've already built out in the system and brings them together under one centralized workflow instead of reporting. So in the context of AI, a readiness campaign, what Adam's able to do here is take controls like AI model monitoring, AI data management and privacy, AI readiness, the ethical AI certification, package them into one campaign, and then delegate them either in a specific order or all at once, and then be able to, again, document findings, comments, etc., with one workflow. So what have we learned, right? Talking about this, we've learned that, to go from present to an automated intelligence with AI, governance is absolutely paramount, right? Governance, documentation, due diligence, all of the things that, compliance would do now for really any other vendor, but obviously with a little more heightened scrutiny considering the cutting edge nature of the technology. So having those pieces in place, having consistent, repeatable processes to capture them, not just check the box, and just laying a foundation for future readiness and oversight while being able to adapt that and prove what was being done at that time, for what reason, to establish readiness. So in the story of Adam, right, we've learned that AI has remained the GPS while Adam stays in the driver's seat, right? The human compliance function still remains absolutely essential. Adam becomes the decision maker, the CCO becomes the decision maker along with the compliance team, and AI just accelerates those workflows. I know we're approaching the end of the webinar here, so I do want to take a moment to pause for questions. So we'll wait here now for any questions that people may have, and we will read them aloud and address them here live. And if there's anything that you'd like to drill down on, have more clarity on, feel free to ask it now.
There were, as we wait, for questions, there were a couple areas that I really liked that you point out. One being Adam versus AI, that there are still things that Adam needs to do, that he is not solely relying on AI, that this is a tool. I think that's really important and something that I think people are fearful of, but there are still things that we do that AI can't. And another couple items is that we're using tools in compliance that we already have that we didn't think about how we could use them for, like the certifications for due diligence. Like someone who is still learning compliance, that's me, I would not have thought to use the certifications in that way. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, obviously we're focused on AI readiness and governance, but yeah, the system has a multitude of use cases, AI just being topical, but we're really excited about not just the governance piece, but also the AI marketing review as well.
And since we're in the Q&A section, I do have some questions for you. What's been the biggest barrier to firms adopting AI so far?
That's a great question. The biggest barrier far and away has been internal readiness processes, right? So, those of you watching fully understand this when you've gone to implement AI into your firm. It's not just as simple as downloading an app on your phone or anything like that. It's being able to get that internal alignment, that internal readiness where you're able to say, okay, this is something that our firm is comfortable with. We believe it's safe, it's low risk, and we're going to move forward. So I think, part of that is education. Part of that is, of course, structured process. And the other part is just, internal alignment. So I think that's been the biggest barrier. If you check the news, right, you'll notice that there's something every single day almost about AI, and the technology is moving quickly, but it's really outpacing the governance what we're dealing with.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree. There's something every day with news and the AI. Now, so talking about biggest barriers, what about use cases? So what are some of the leading use cases you're seeing for AI in compliance right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to what you said earlier, I think the leading cases is the AI review, right? Those of you market review submissions, know it firsthand. There could be a lot of friction in that process, a lot of back and forth, right? So it's how do you cut down on that friction? And from our standpoint, one of those ways is using AI. It's let AI do the heavy lifting. Let it spot those patterns, those missing disclosures, that heavy language. Let it spot those things, call them out, make the suggested changes, and push that process faster. So I would definitely think AI marketing review is a strong one. I would also see something like policy intelligence, right? Where AI could go through your compliance manual, recommend changes potentially, as well as potentially promote different testing of different controls based on changes in news and events.
Now, I have one last question for you, and that's, you mentioned Orion can support more than just AI governance. What are some other, broad use cases for firms leveraging today?
Oh, yeah, great question. I mean, in a nutshell, Orion Compliance is a complete end-to-end workflow solution for compliance and employees. So when you think about, for example, outside business activities, you think of personal trade surveillance of outside accounts, right? Are they trading something on a restricted list? Are they pre-clearing? Are they trading products they should, crypto ETFs? Are they investing to their compliance manual? Are they trade error forms or submitting their gifts and entertainment? So a real broad variety of different use cases around code of ethics, personal trading, risk assessment, and other areas. There's a whole broad range of areas where firms could really automate a lot of what they do, and of course, just overall improve those workflows.
Well, thank you for answering those questions. It looks like we don't have any Q&A. So is there anything else that you would like to add, let the audience know?
I would just say that with Orion Compliance, we're incredibly excited for this year. There's a lot on the horizon, and we look forward to hearing your feedback.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Louis, for joining us and talking to us about compliance and AI. If you want to sign up for any other webinars, or if you want to look at other content, you can scan the QR code. Again, you can also access that through the Learn More button on the upper right-hand side. But with that, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.